Hello ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Witty here. I'm here again with another in our series of Excel lessons. This is lesson 2 on formatting cells. So today what we're going to look at, we've already looked at the overview, we've looked at what the columns and rows are, we've looked at all the fact that we're working in an Excel workbook, not an Excel worksheet. Each individual sheet we can work on inside of Excel. But today we're going to actually start entering some data and look at how to format that data in the many different ways that we have to access or to format that data. So we're going to do that by entering some information. And I'm going to start by entering the information, and I'm going to speed it up really quickly and get through a certain component. So it might jump to me having finished entering all the information at some point in time. So just be wary of that. And we're going to just do kind of like a little survey. So what we're doing here is we're just creating a very simple spreadsheet. And all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be entering in the number of students who think that that is their favorite soft drink. Okay, so we have our basic data in. Now, with that basic data, we're going to do a few things. So the first thing you'll notice is that with some of the soft drinks, once we entered information into the cell beside it, the text disappeared, so you can't see that. And that's because the size of the cell is not large enough to hold all of the text inside of the cell. And so there are a couple of ways to fix that. Obviously, one of the things that we have to do is we have to increase the size of that cell in order to see all the data that's inside the cell. So if you kind of hover up on to the column here for the soft drink column, you'll notice that we have, when we hover over like the A, that little block on the A, the cursor turns into a little downwards arrow. And that allows us to actually click and then select that entire column. So now you can see we've got the entire column selected all the way down. Okay. But what I want to do is I don't necessarily want to select the column. I want to move over till then I see that little crosshairs with the arrows on the left and right hand side. And then if I single click, like click and hold once, I have the ability to drag that column out as wide as I want. So I can drag it way out here. That might be a little bit silly, or I can drag it just kind of to where I think it needs to be in order to, have all of the soft drinks listed there, and I can see them completely. That's the first way I can change the column size. So I'll bring that back, and then we'll try a second way to do it. So the second way we can do it is we can actually, again, hover up over top of that A column, move in between A and B so that we've got that crosshairs, and then if I double click, you'll notice that it increases the size of that column to the biggest, the cell that has the largest contents in the row, or sorry, in the column. So you can see that Orange Crush is our largest, text-wise, it's our largest, it's got the most number of characters and it's kind of the widest text. And so that changes that automatically. So it changes it to the largest one. So that's really helpful if there are a lot of different and you want to kind of keep it as small as you can, but you still want to see all of the columns. That's one really simple way to do it. Again, you just hover over and then double click and it will bring it to its largest size. The other thing you have the ability to do, and you may have noticed that once I start to drag, or if you start to drag, you'll notice that the width changes. There's a number that shows up above the cursor that actually tells us how wide that is. Well, we can actually set that number by right clicking. If we right click on the letter A up here, you'll notice that there's a column width setting. And I can click on that and then I can set that column width to a value that I want it to set. So I'm going to set that column width to 15 and then it jumps and it actually now is at the size 15. Okay, so you have a few different ways that you can actually change the width of a column in order to show all the data that's there. Okay. Favorites, okay, because the largest value we have is favorite and it fits, but I'm going to widen it a little bit just so that we can see, see the word favorite a little bit. Obviously, these two things are titles as well, and we're going to get to looking at that again. But before I move on, I want to actually enter a title for the entire sheet, so a title for the entire spreadsheet. So if I go over here, I want to actually add it above the soft drink and favorite. These are kind of my subtitles for my columns, but I want to enter something at the top. So I'm going to right click and click insert. And you notice that it will insert a row on top of the current row that I have. I'm going to do that one more time. Okay, and now I've got 2 rows at the top of my page that I actually have access to now. And I'm actually going to put my title here. Okay, so I've got this title across the top. Now, one of the things that you should be aware of is that right now this title is only in A1. If I click on B1, you'll notice the title's not there anymore. In that formula bar that normally shows the contents of the cell, it's not there. It's only in A1. The only reason we see it in B is because there's nothing in B. If I were to add something into B, okay, you'll notice that it disappears because A1 is really where that soft drink is. So I'm going to get rid of the contents of B, and we're going to do something that we like to do with most titles, and it also allows us to kind of change the way our tables look or change the way our spreadsheets look. And that is, I'm going to highlight both these cells, and I'm going to do what's called center and merge, or merge and center. And when I do that, what it does is it merges A1 and B1, and now you'll notice that there actually is no B1. When I click up here on where B1 would normally be, it's actually not there anymore. The next cell I have is C1. So now A1 has stretched itself out over past B1. And so now I've got just A1 and then it moves to C1, and that then allows me to kind of merge these 2 cells. Now I'm going to increase the size of the text of this. It is a title. You'll notice now that I increase the size, it makes it too big, so I'm going to increase the size of my overall chart size as well. Okay, so now we've got our favorite soft drinks. I'm also going to increase the size of this, and to do that, again, we just highlight our cells that we want to edit, and then up here we can either right click on that, or up here we have our ribbon that allows us to change some things. We can change the actual font itself. I'm more concerned about just changing the font, and we also have the ability to bold things, which I'm going to do to both my titles. So my titles are now bolded as well. I can change them to italics. I can underline them as well. It might be useful, for instance, to underline our soft drink and favorite title. Okay, so that's some really basic formatting. Right now, all of our text is at Calibri 11. I'm actually going to change that. So I'm going to change anything that's not part of my titles. I'm just going to change the font. Let's change it to Arial. Okay, so now we've changed the font to a separate font for the data that's inside the cell. So we've got 2 subheadings. We've got our title of our spreadsheet. We've changed the size of the fonts. We've bolded them, we've underlined the 2 titles, and we've also gone through and changed the font of the data that we have entered here. So now we're going to do a couple of things. So the first thing I want to do is I want to enter a total cell. So I've put this total, and we're actually going to work with this on the next video when we actually start to look at some basic formulas. Today's lesson, remember, is just about formatting, and I don't want to get too far into some of the more detailed things like formulas and doing other things. That will come in a later video. This video is strictly on formatting. So you also have the ability, by the way, if you want to increase or decrease the size of text, you've got these 2 increase font size, decrease font size. So you actually, instead of having to choose a specific size of font, which I like to do because you can actually see the size if you've got it selected already, you can just actually simply click on increased size or decreased size. Okay, same thing here. I want that maybe a little bigger, and so I automatically change it. Now, one thing you will notice is that when you do increase the size of your text beyond the size of the row, okay, so this row over here, you can see this in cell 1. See how cell 1 is so much thicker than all the other rows? The reason for that is because the font is too big to fit in the row. So we don't need to resize it. Though just like we can do in the columns, we do have the same ability to resize the height of each of our rows. Okay, so I can actually change the height of my row exactly the same way I did with my columns, just by hovering in between my cells and seeing those little crosshairs and then clicking and moving up and down, or double clicking, or right-clicking on the actual cell and changing row height to a specific row height. Okay, so we have the ability to change the row height as well as the column width. Some other formatting we can do here. These titles here we know are subtitles, so I want to actually shade those in because I want them to be differentiated a little bit more from the actual data that's in our spreadsheet. So I'm going to choose this fill icon and I'm going to fill those with a light gray color just to differentiate them from the rest of the cell. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe fill the title as well, just so that, again, it kind of differentiates it from the rest of the cell. And I'm going to do the same with the total cell. I'm just going to use the total cell itself though. The data that's inside total I don't want to change. And I'm also going to increase the font of total and also increase or make it bold. Okay, so there we go. We've got our spreadsheet. We've done some very basic formatting. We've resized the columns. We've resized rows. We've changed the font. We've merged and centered. So we actually took these two and we merged them and centered them. We did some bolding. We did some underlining as well. We've shaded some of the cells. One of the other things I wouldn't mind showing you is that you do also have the ability to add grid lines. So if you wanted this to actually look like a table, like especially when you were going to print it, if you were going to print the information, you could do so simply by adding grid lines into it. And again, you have the ability to choose whatever grid lines you want. I'm just going to click all borders. And now you'll notice that there are borders around the section that I selected. So now we've got, just like a table in Word, we've got these grid lines around the outside of our document. And then, just to quickly show you, if I were to go to View and then go to the Print View or the Page Layout View, okay, you can see that those grid lines will now show. So if I were to print this, and I can actually show you that. Let's go back to the normal view. I'll go File and I'll go Print. When you see the print, you can actually see what prints out, and you can see that the grid lines get printed with it. Now, I don't want to print it, and I actually don't want those grid lines. So I'm going to hover, I'm going to select all the grid lines, go back to Home, and I'm going to get rid of all my borders, so I have no borders. And now if I go to my print command, you'll see that there are no lines, there are no grid lines in my document. Okay. One other thing I should tell you about the look of a spreadsheet, and this actually might have been something that we would have looked at the last video when we're looking at the overview. You can see this dotted line here on the right hand side. This dotted line means it's the end of the page. So if we continue to add data to the right of this section, as soon as we end up writing data past this dotted line, it indicates that we're actually on a new page of our spreadsheet. And that doesn't really affect us when we're looking at a spreadsheet here in Excel. But if you're printing the document, you'll notice that it then prints the second page, so it only ends up printing this data all by itself. You can get some pretty funky results if you are not careful about keeping things on one page or how the pages are outlined. So we'll look maybe into that a little bit more. For now, again, I'm just looking at some formatting. The other thing I can do is I can left or right align data. So for instance, or center. I don't like the fact that these are left aligned, these titles. I want to center them, so I select the text, or I select the cells, and then I just click on the alignment and I center those. Okay, not merge and center, because I don't want to merge them together. I just want them centered in each one of their columns. Numbers will almost always show up right aligned, so they will always show up on the right hand side of your of your cell, and text will almost always show up on the left hand side. So I'm actually going to do one more thing. I'm going to move this total over to the right hand side because I want it to be, the total number is going to show up here, and I want that word total to actually show up closer to that number so that we understand really what that number is when we do it. So one last thing I would like to cover in this video is I would like to show you how you could format the number itself. So right now you'll notice we've got these numbers and they're all neat, they're integers, which makes sense because you can't have part of a vote It's only 1 vote per student. And so what I want to do though is I want to show you that you can actually turn these into decimal numbers. So I'm going to highlight all the numbers, or I'm going to highlight the entire column. It depends on how you want your spreadsheet to look as to whether you're just going to select the data itself, or are you going to select the entire column so that every item that you put in that column will then have that same formatting. In this case, for our purposes, I'm just going to highlight the data that's there. And I'm going to, so you have the ability to actually decrease or increase the decimal. So you'll notice here, I can actually increase it so that each one of those numbers now has 1 decimal place. Or I can decrease that decimal, I can increase it to 2. I'll make sure I highlight it so that I can increase it to 2 decimal places. I can do more if I want, or I can again reduce it down and just have 1 decimal, or no decimals. And in this case, that's probably the best option. I don't really need any significant digits in this because it's, again, just whole numbers. It's just votes. So I really just want it to show up as a normal number, just as a general number. You also have some options about how your numbers are shown by dropping down this box. So you can see I can change it to make it look like currency. I can use accounting formatting, date, time. There's all kinds of things that I can do with this that allow me to change the different format that the numbers show up as. But we're just going to leave it like that for now because we don't need that formatting. We'll look at some spreadsheets later on that will require us to format those cells. So I think that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. It is lesson 2 on Excel. We will be moving on to some very simple formulas in our next lesson, and I hope to see you at the next video. Thanks for watching.